Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with today, wrapping it up with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes out is from Miles. Not really sure what to say about this, other than that this guy knows how to tug at your heartstrings. We're going to be checking out some Harry Chapin. The song Taxi off of the Heads and Tails album. Kind of curious when this came out. 72. Oh geez, this is definitely the most popular song on the album. Alright, let's kick it, see what's going on with Harry.
It was raining hard in Frisco. I needed one more fare to make my night. A lady up ahead waved to flag me down. She got in at the light. Oh, where you going to, my lady blue? It's a shame you ruined your gown in the rain. She just looked out the window. She said 16 Parkside Lane. Something about her was familiar. I could swear I seen her face before. But she said, I'm sure you're mistaken. And she didn't say anything more. It took a while, but she looked in the mirror. Then she glanced at the license for my name. A smile seemed to come to her slowly. It was a sad smile just the same. And she said,
I like the strings kind of being a bit drearier with those long, bendy bowed notes versus the plucky, brighter guitar stuff.
Little smiles, I still remember you.
Yeah, there's a it's not full-blown melancholy. It's
was somewhere.
It's like memories of the past.
I used to take her home in my car. We learned
The tremolo bow is
an
an interesting choice.
The lesson hadn't gone too far. You see, she was gonna be an actress, and I was gonna learn to fly. She took off to find the footlights. I took off
This
to find the sky.
sounds like steel brushes on a snare, switching between one bar of accenting 1 and 3 and one bar accenting 2 and 4. Talking about change going on there.
Whoa, I've got something inside me to drive the princess blind. There's a wild man wizard, he's hiding in me, illuminating my mind. Oh, I've got something inside me, not what my life's about, 'cause I've been letting my outside tide me over till my time runs out.
I like all the variation on this. Okay. Some soft counterpoint from the strings over here. That plucky harmonic playing. So good.
To talk about. Whatever we had once was gone. So I turned my cab into the driveway, past the gate and the fine trim lawns. And she said, we must get together, but I knew it'd never be arranged. And she handed me $20 for a $2.50 fare. She said, Harry, keep the change. Well, another man might have been angry, and another man might have been hurt, but another man never would let her go. I stashed the bill in my shirt, and she walked away in silence. It's strange how you never know, but we'd both gotten what we'd asked for such a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
You see, she was gonna be an actress, and I was gonna learn to fly. She took off to find the footlights, I took off for the sky. And here she's acting happy inside her handsome home, and me, I'm flying in my taxi, taking tips and getting stoned. I go flying so high when I'm stoned.
What an interesting subversion. Is it just me? Or does that feel a bit like a punchline? Like a 6-minute lead up to the joke of, I wanted to be an air pilot, but now I just get high. Like, oh man. I don't know if that's the intention, but that's what I get out of it. A very long-winded way to land at that punchline while also taking a very, I think, human approach to this long-winded tale. It speaks of highs and lows. It's about relationships and regrets and the way that life turns out. It feels very relatable in some ways, and then there's a punchline, and I think that kind of makes it even better. It's like when a comedy film actually has a well-earned, heartfelt ending. It kind of makes you choke up a little bit. Like you didn't sign up for a drama, but they did it well, you know? And it was sort of unexpected, and that sort of makes it better. And I think that's what happened here. I was really on board for this story. The music was excellent. We're going to talk about that in a second, but you know, I'm listening to him tell this tale. I'm on board with it. And then he gets to the end and it's a punchline. And it doesn't feel out of nowhere. It doesn't feel unearned. It doesn't feel like a cheap shot. It kind of works. Yeah. Now, on the topic of the music, there is a lot of different ideas in here. It all sort of sits on the same foundation, and this helps it all gel well together, but it is still jarring transitions between ideas. Normally, I think this would take me out of it, and if I wasn't following along with the story, I think this would definitely be where I would start to say, oh, there's too many ideas, it never really made a lot of sense, blah, 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 blah. My usual spiel about jarring transitions. But I think this presents a very interesting idea here. When we listen to progressive songs, and I'm not listening for the lyrics because there's so much other stuff going on, or because the lyrics are growled at me and I'm not going to pick them up no matter how intently I listen, I have to follow the tale of the music, the narrative it's presenting. And if it's just a bunch of random ideas smashed together, I'm not getting a story there either. But in those moments, I often see comments of, especially when we're talking about like classic prog rock, that the music is background to the lyrics. If you understand the story of the lyrics, the music makes sense. I just don't ever pick up lyrics on a first time like that. But for here, I did. They are clear, they are present, they are the most important thing in the song as far as production and spotlighting. It's almost impossible not to hear the lyrics on the first time through. It kind of sits in that folk Americana idea where the music is background, it's secondary, it's the stage dressing to the play. And the vocals are definitely the performance. They're the part that you're going to see the play for, anyways. The dialogue, the acting. It's really easy to get sucked into the lyrical work here, even though it's something I don't usually do for first time listens. And so I had the narrative context from the lyrical side, and I was picking up the musical changes, and they work so well together. And so I'm not really upset about the jarring transitions. I'm not really upset about the variety of different flavors and spices going on in here that honestly don't make a lot of sense in isolation. But when you do take into the account of the narrative, and particularly, I think, the emotions that the protagonist is trying to convey at that specific moment, they all make sense. And this is what y'all have been telling me this whole time. Like, I know, but this is the first time I've really been able to pick it up during the reaction. And so I am going to have a very uncharacteristic take here that the variety of music ends up working really well. And that's why, because I was able to follow the narrative along with all those wild musical choices. And so, like at the base level, we have a kind of a Americana thing going on. We got some light drumming, we got some guitars, acoustic guitars, light strumming, fairly upbeat or positive chord progressions, and then the story on top of that. We have a bass guitar in there too that's giving us a walking bass line. It's a quasi walking bass line. Its job is still chord shaping, but it's not a traditional jazz walking bass line, which tends to have a little bit more movement to it. This is just kind of up and down. And sometimes just staying on a single tone, if that's what it needs to be at the moment to emphasize stationariness or something like that. But the percussion is also very light. And then we have the vocals on top of that. That's the core foundation to most of these sections. Anytime that we have a rising of idea, stacking of layers, or rising of tension, we always revert back to this core, brighter, optimistic base. And so everything else typically acts as contrast to this, such as the first time we hear the violin come in on the left side and it's semi-melancholic. I still don't know the specific word I want for it. It definitely has a bit of that, I don't know if it's regret, but definitely looking to the past and maybe feeling better about the way things were than how they are today. I don't know if there's a word for that. Bittersweet is kind of what I want to go for, where the violin is the bitter part and the guitars are the sweet part. And it's sort of this mixed feeling as you remember the good times of the past. That was one place, and typically, anytime the violin comes in, whether it is a smoother, more melodic idea, or it is the tremolo bowing that they come in to present a bit of tension, it usually does feel a bit more somber. It tends to pull the song down a little bit in opposition to the guitar, which tends to be bouncier in rhythm and brighter in timbre. The vocals also typically keep a pretty bright pace to them, um, both in the way that they're delivered rhythmically, but also the tone of the vocals. And of course, they are part of the harmonic information here, so they tend to just be a bit brighter and more optimistic, though there are times that you can kind of hear some weight be put into the vocal delivery, as if the words that he's saying has kind of been a gut punch to him and it's kind of bringing him down just a little bit. Just a little lower energy for a moment before perking it back up to move into that next chorus or the next stanza. Um, we got some nice piano work in here that kind of pops up over on the left. And there's a cacophonous section too. We hear it twice, once in the middle-ish of the song, like 3 minutes 30 seconds, and then once towards the end, right before I think the final couple of stanzas. It's very stacked, very loud, very noisy. It is the part of the song that I found least interesting to me from a casual listening perspective. I didn't enjoy it, but I think artistically it works. I don't know about the first time through, but the second time through, it feels like every part of the song, every new instrument and section that we've introduced in isolation is present simultaneously. It kind of mixes everything. If we have elements of looking to the past, well, that's here too. This is the past and the present simultaneously, but it's also the lows and the highs of the song simultaneously, and it's the cacophony of feeling all of these emotions all at once. It's one of those things that artistically I really like, but sonically was not something I enjoyed. But the song would have been totally different if it wasn't present. I think it was a really great idea to introduce that, and a cool way to bring the plethora of styles together that we hear across this all into a single moment to kind of connect it all. Even if I think it's a bit of a rough moment sonically, it's a cool way of bringing everything together and tying up the entirety of the song right there at the end. Now, if the violin comes in and introduces something a bit more of a melancholic edge, I do want to highlight a cool idea that I heard in the drums. It happens twice. I didn't quite catch a lyrical connection the second time, but the first time it was during the section where he was talking to the person and they were like, they wanted to be an actress and I wanted to be a pilot. And I don't remember what was said after that, but it was sort of about how things went, right? How things changed over time, what our goals were then and where we are now. And the drum, every other bar was changing its accent. It sounded like a steel brush on a snare. So it's not like a big impactful snare crack. It's more of just like a just a nice little emphasized sound. I know that's like super vague, but just go with me on this. It starts out on 1 and 3, and then it goes to 2 and 4, and then 1 and 3, and then 2 and 4. And it's constantly shifting. It's in a state of perpetual alteration. It never stands still, it's constantly changing. I don't know what this is supposed to tie into on a larger scale. It could have just been a cool rhythm that the drummer wanted to put in, but I like that it was sort of tucked underneath a moment of the song where they're looking at where things were and where they are now, how time has changed things. I wonder how much of those sorts of ideas are present in here. I think that for the most part, this song deals with tension and melancholy and joy, bounciness, like very surface level emotional ideas very well. When the music lyrically moves into a specific feeling, the music follows it. But that is a very specific metaphorical use of music that is the only time I really picked up anything like it. I'm curious if I might hear something like that again elsewhere in the track. And if you're more familiar with this song, if you've picked up a cool moment like that, please let me know down in the comments. I'm intrigued to see how often the music might line up with the lyrics on that metaphorical angle more so than an emotional one, which, like I said, I'm already certain they do a really great job on. The last thing I want to touch on is the vocalist. I don't have a lot to say here. I think the vocals are fine. Nothing really stands out to me on sort of a virtuoso level. There isn't anything in here where they're showing off. We don't have high belted notes or anything like that. But what I do think this vocalist does a fantastic job of is being charismatic and being a storyteller. Like I mentioned right from the start, I was sucked into the vocals. There's a nice clarity and warmth to his tone. I can immediately hear what he's saying. There's plenty of time where he takes breaks to say something and then allow the space to exist, giving me time to engage with the music too, while also sort of ruminating over what the lyrics he just said might mean. Um, but there's also, like I said, a really nice element of delivery to it too. As I mentioned earlier, there are parts where you can kind of hear the energy dip down a little bit in his voice, and he just doesn't seem so sure of himself anymore. And then he'll bring it back up and put that smile back on and bring that brightness back to his delivery. And I think he does a great job of being a character, of acting through this. Now, granted, I think at one point he even mentioned that the person he was talking to called him Harry, so maybe this is a real experience for him. I don't know. But the end result is something that feels very relatable, feels very human, and feels delivered in a way that is someone talking to me rather than a song artistically being performed to me. And there's just a lot of charisma and skill in the acting portion of this that I think comes through his vocal work very well. And I wanted to shine a little bit of light on that. Let me dive into some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this video up. All right. So originally I felt that this was a bit of a punchline. It's it's not. It's actually a little more than that, which I think is why it felt fine while I was listening to it and why it didn't seem out of the blue because it was a little bit more, and I guess I was catching some of that without actually realizing what was happening. So the basic element here is that Harry is a taxi driver. And as the verse 1 and 2 say, he had one more fare he needed to make in order to get the money he needed for the night. So he finds a lady who waves him down and he asks her, "Hey, where are you going?" And she says 16 Parkside Lane. He thinks that she's familiar, but she says, "You're mistaken," and then nothing else happens. Although in verse 4 it says that after a while she looks in the mirror and she glances at the license for my name, and a smile seems to come over her slowly. It was a sad smile, just the same. So, this is an interesting idea of introducing sorrow and joy simultaneously, something the song consistently showcases. She says, "How are you, Harry?" And he says, "How are you, Sue?" Through the too many miles and the too little smiles, I still remember you. So while it's been quite some time and life hasn't all been joy, I still remember you from way back when. Says that they used to date in verse 5. The chorus comes in and says, "She was going to be an actress and I was going to learn to fly. She took off to find the footlights and I took off to find the sky." So they dated at one time, but then went their own separate ways. The post chorus brings up him, though, why he's driving a taxi. He says, "I've got something inside me to drive a princess blind. There's a wild man wizard hiding in me, illuminating my mind. And I've got something inside me. It's not what my life's about, because I've been letting my outside tide me over until my time runs out." Basically saying that what I'm doing right here, this taxi driving, this isn't my dream. It's not what I want out of life, but it is how things are. And it's not satisfying for me. I have things that I want to do in me. And it's frustrating to have to drive this taxi. So it kind of talks about how Harry's life here isn't all that great. Now, verse 6 says that there wasn't much talk for the two after this, and he eventually pulls into the driveway of the house, and it's past a gate with fine trimmed lawns. So she's living in a nice place. Verse 7 says that she said, "We must get together, but I knew it would never be arranged. She handed me a 20 for a 250 fare and said, 'Harry, keep the change.'" Well, another man might have been angry, and another man might have been hurt, but another man would have never let her go, so I stashed the bill in my shirt. So he sees her walking up to this, nice house, and thinking, "Oh, this could have been my life with her, right? If I just, followed her in her dreams instead of chasing my own, if we hadn't split ways." But he says, "I didn't. I went my own way. I have no one to blame here but me. So I'm not angry about this. I'm not hurt. This is just the way life goes." He's being very rational about this. Now here is where the twist starts to happen. We kind of go over this idea once again of what she wanted to do when she was younger, what he wanted to do when he was younger. It's a return to this chorus. It says, "And she walked away in silence. It's strange how you never know, but we'd both gotten what we asked for such a long, long time ago." And here she's acting happy inside her handsome home, and me, I'm flying in my taxi, taking tips and getting stoned. She is in a marriage that she isn't happy in. So I'm assuming that she's not an actress here, even though that's sort of what everything else sort of alludes to. What ends up happening is that we get the rug pulled out from under us on both accords. Not just the idea that he wanted to be a pilot and now he just gets stoned, which is an interesting double entendre for getting high, but also that this entire time we thought that she was rich because of being an actress. She had a pretty dress on at the beginning of the song. She gave him a 1000% tip or something like that. What was it? $20 on a 250 fare. That's a pretty big overshoot there. And she said, keep the change. So that's pretty big. Seems that she's living the luxurious life. She has this nice house. She's got to be an actress, but she's not. She just acts at home. She's not happy. So she got to be an actress without actually starring in movies, and he got to get high without ever actually getting into a plane. Both of their lives are tragic. That is the gut punch right there. It turns it from a bit of a joke, which it is. This is a punchline, but it's not a ha ha funny punchline. It's a gut punch line. That was better in my head. But I'm explaining this properly. And when you kind of capture all of the somber, bittersweet parts of this song, it kind of alludes to this happening. I kind of pictured that most of the more somber parts of the music were just Harry's perspective, what he wanted out of life, what he got, maybe a couple of little daydreams of, I could have still been with this person, and I'm not, right? She's living the luxurious life, and I'm just a taxi driver. But it's parts of her too that are shown in the music, and it's actually one line early on. Says that once she realized who the taxi driver was, she had a smile that came to her slowly, but it was a sad smile just the same. And at this, I thought it was mostly just a sort of that bittersweet going down memory lane. Yeah, those times were pretty great back then, right? But it's actually that she's unhappy where she is too. Maybe she's even wondering what life would have been like if she hadn't chased her dreams and failed and had followed Harry. Although knowing that he's just a taxi driver, maybe things wouldn't have been any better. How things could have gone differently for both of them. But in the end, both of them, in a sense, get what they wanted. Yeah, this is, yeah. It doesn't quite pull at my heartstrings in the way that it makes me want to cry, but it is a very sad story. And I think it's delivered with a lot of character. These are my thoughts. Harry Chapin's Taxi. What do you think of this, though? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of things, just want to add your own opinion or thoughts to the conversation. Throw all that down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.